Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Wednesday night live sketch. My name is Frank Summers, and tonight I'm going to be drawing the Rancor from The Return of the Jedi. I invite you guys to grab your sketchbooks, open your favorite drawing program, and just listen along as I work. You don't actually have to draw what I'm drawing, but the important thing is that you are drawing. So please, if you want, just put me on in the background and let's just get to work. I generally like to spend about 20 to 25 minutes on each sketch. I try to keep these quick. I don't like to belabor them and make them go longer than they need to. I'll quickly run over how I start off. I generally begin to amass all of my reference material, which in this case looks like a variety of. So this one over here in the middle is our Ralph McQuarrie. Which, as a side note, I just recently was reading the Tony DiDolisi, I think it's called Star Wars Adventures of Luke Skywalker, and it's a gathering of all the Ralph McQuarrie artwork and packaging it together for all three of the original movies and telling it more directly the story of Luke Skywalker. And it's using all the original artwork, like I said, from the concept artwork from the original trilogy. Really cool book. Definitely worth checking out. The bottom one possibly might be from the toy. Kind of can't tell. And obviously the top one is a still from the film. And after I got somewhat familiar with it, I went through my process of just making rough thumbnails, trying to figure out what his gesture is. What exactly is he doing? And he's a tough character to deal with. And that's mainly because frankly, the technology of the day was kind of slowing them down. I feel like they had this idea in their head of this massive battle that was going to take place between Luke and this monster. And when you really look at it, nothing really happens in that scene. It's a Gamorrean guard gets eaten. Luke hides under a bench. He almost gets eaten, and then he throws a skull at a door. I mean, it happens so quickly. And really the Rancor is not moving around a lot. So there's not much dynamic stuff happening. The biggest dynamic thing that happens is Luke getting picked up, and that, like by the Rancor picks him up, and that's actually accomplished through an edit. It's not even a special effect. So what that means for me is that it's really hard to kind of find something that worked that isn't just this. You know, he can move his arms to the side, but for the most part, he's just kind of like this hulking, hungover kind of dude. That said, I kind of fell upon this drawing over here. Let me point the upper corner here. One of the best parts about this scene is after he's swallowed the Gamorrean guard, he kind of looks over his shoulder and glares at Luke. I kind of want to somehow capture that gesture of him peering over a shoulder, which he doesn't have much of a shoulder because they're above his head, because his anatomy is nuts, but we'll get into that in a second. So I want to have that look where he looks like he's just looking at us. He's just about ready to turn around and come at us. So I really like this thumbnail, and what I'm going to do is I'm not in Toon Boom. I do that quite often. I'm going to circle this thumbnail. I'm going to copy. I'm going to put it up on another layer, and I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to hide the rest of this stuff. I'm going to take this thumbnail and I'm going to blow it up a good amount, and I'm going to use this just as my rough underneath. This is the beginning. This is a kernel of an idea, and we're going to flesh this out a little more. So why don't I start my timer? Let's see if this actually works. Hey Cortana, set alarm for 25 minutes.
I set an alarm for 10 p.m.
Oh, so nice of her. I feel so high tech now. So why don't we get to it? I'm gonna pull down my opacity a little bit on the layer, and I'm gonna get moving on it. I'll work with a bit of a darker blue so that we can kind of work over top what we have. I'm gonna hit save, and one of the things I like best about this, I'm going to work from a little bit of a distance at first. One of the things I like best about this is this very strong arc and how it kind of goes into a little bit of a slope at its tail. but it's very strong at the top up here to emphasize the hunch part of his back. And I imagine his rib cage is somewhere under here, because he's mainly he's head and like arms. So his rib cage has to be around here someplace. And I like how this, the bottom of the tail, is a little sharper, kind of balancing out the top up here. My brother's attacking me. So I like the play here of like this sharp at the top versus this sharp here at the bottom of the tail. And I like that. I'm going to keep working with that. And now I want to try and find where his shoulders would exist. And I know I spoke about it briefly before, but like his anatomy does not, well, it doesn't exist. It's this thing that is created. So it can't function in reality. I think if this guy was real, he would just fall straight over. So I have a center line. I'm going to try my best to work with what I know here. I have a center line, it's not a center line, excuse me, an eye line where the orbital of the eye will go. His nose is this, will construct the nose. The nose actually exists above the eye, flaring nostrils. And the brow kind of rolls along with the ridges that define this shape. And at this point, I'm working very loose, and I'm constructing my Rancor. And he's got like this crazy top lip, which I believe is subdivided into 3 sections. And one thing I like about him is the asymmetrical properties of his teeth. Like there's one jutting that way, there's a little tiny guy right there. Another thing that's interesting about his mouth is that it almost feels like a shark. Maybe not a shark. I don't know. Like he has this crease here. His mouth is very haunting, I must say. But like this crease doesn't seem to function. It can open pretty wide, but I don't think it would go like if I was to draw it wide, it would go like that. Let me undo that. I feel like that crease would always be there. And so he has these 2 bottom tusks that almost appear out of it's not recessed. It's not a part of a gum or anything like that. These 2 bottom ones. And then he has a chin, and he has these points, for lack of a better word, sharp. I don't know. Again, I can't. I don't know how to really describe it. Sharp, bony structure. But what's interesting, a good part of his design is that it moves into this soft, where this is fleshy. You know what I mean? And that's kind of fun. And he has like this plate, a shoulder plate, which is very long, and it has ridges coming off of it. And again, they're pretty, I don't want to say random, but they're not, there's a lot of play going on there. And it's very scaly, but we won't get into the detailing of that yet. I want to return back to the eye. So this is the orbital of the eye, and all that really am referring to is that it is a space where the eye exists, and now we have lids that are showing us only what we see of it. I want to go a little wider. Lid. Push it. Drop the bottom lid down a little more. Like he's got a bead on us. But the eye exists in there. It's inside of a socket. And so imagining that, drawing that in there helps me root it. How am I looking on time here? So I got 20 minutes. I'm doing okay. I've only been jabbing for 5 minutes. And so one of the things I'm thinking about is how designy do I want to get with this version of the Rancor. Last week I did a very designy version of Power Droid, or Gonk. What the heck am I trying to say? The Power Droid. And I wanted to be very fun with that and cartoony. But for the Rancor, and one of the reasons I chose the Rancor is that he's so he's got all these parts that make him kind of interesting to look at. I believe the nails are treated similar to how that tooth, these bottom tusks are treated. And he's got this odd, crazy, weird pinky nail. It's not even a finger, it's a pinky. And a pretty commanding, like, thumb for grasping. So you can shove as many Gamorrean guards as possible in there. Yeah. The hands are very gnarly, curled. And he has a lot. So there is some anatomy on him. So there's like some pecs down here someplace. You know, in this reference of this still, let me pull the thumbs. Excuse me. Let me pull the reference down a little bit, and I'll draw over top of it so you can see. Too much. Excuse me. So there is some. If you can see that, I'll switch to a red. There is some hint of like a pec under there, right? Because this is how our anatomy works. Our pecs, our pectorals kind of wrap into and hug our upper shoulder, and it's kind of what holds our arm in place. So it is interesting to see that they did take some of that, some anatomy, some human anatomy that we are familiar with, and they worked it into his design. So let's move along now to the trunk. Let's try and get some legs in here. And his legs reminded me a lot of the Shadow of the Colossus that I did a few weeks ago, Valis, where it's like an ox, double jointed, if you will. So I kind of want to do a better job on this. I want this like he's taking a step toward us here. So this is like our knee block, right? And there will be a swelling of musculature up here. So this will be a down plane under here. A down plane meaning something that's just down. There's no light hitting it. If light was shining, if there was a source of light from up here. And if I remember correctly, his feet reminded me a heck of a lot of Aaand feet. Except instead of flatter toes, so to speak, they're more nail-like. Like a nail. I even saw a version where like it looked like there was like wrappings on these, but the movie looked like the film removed that. Let's try and keep this flowing down here. And he does have these little pieces that I kind of want to think about. So a bigger piece here playing off of a medium-sized spike, like a smaller, thinner one here. That's like our basic design elements, playing large against medium against small, honestly. It's a very basic building block of building up a design. And make no mistake about it, these characters that we look at are designs. And all of the choices that you see are very explicit. They're there for a reason. I like how bony his arms are. And if I remember correctly, there are some spindly type things coming off of his elbow. You know, I may have been sound like I was making fun of the Rancor when I first started this, but no way, man. I mean, easily one of the blew my mind when I first saw it. And to this day, there's something exciting about it. There's something, you know, definitely the nostrils, I feel like, should overpower the breath. This is it's hard to tell, right? Maybe I have things kind of too bubbly. Let's construct this nose again and keep it a little more graphic. And we can introduce more subtle nostril flares, if you will. You know, he suddenly struck me that he resembles the Dark Overlord from Howard the Duck. And I don't know I mean, other than the fact that obviously George Lucas was involved with both of them, but I wonder if Ralph McQuarrie was involved with the design on the Dark Overlord. Obviously, the Dark Overlord's more scorpion-like. Again, I want the idea that he's peeking over his shoulder, so I'm going to try and project this shoulder carapace. And this is very flat going into his head until we get to the top where vertebrae begins, very smooth vertebrae from the McQuarrie sketch. Let's pull it up a little bit. I'm just playing with the opacity on my layers. The McQuarrie sketch has them way more subtle and smoother. In the film, they're definitely harder edged and way more pronounced. Let's get back to our roughs. How are we looking on time? About 10 minutes left. So why don't we start moving ahead a little further here? You can play with some shape. His body is a little more in profile, so it's okay to let this kind of ride a little more like that. And here's, give like a little bit of darkness in his mouth. There's that chin. Let's go back into here again. Okay, let's zoom out and get a good look at what we're dealing with. Again, he's top heavy. I'm purposefully not putting in his the arm behind him. I'm purposefully kind of like leaving that out. I'm not a fan of what's going on here with his hand, so why don't we work this hand a little more? And I want to work with what I know. I know that I'll try and build the shapes of what our hand would look like. Part of the problem too is his wrist is possibly a little too thin. Let's look at our reference. Yeah, way thicker, way thicker, way thicker, way thicker. Maybe not even as long. We can do a little lasso action and just scoot. There we go. And we can thicken this arm. There we go. There we go. Okay, it's feeling a little more meaty. Don't want to run over my time too much. Let's adjust this hand a little more. Not a huge fan of what's going on with it. Let's work it a little more. Save. Here's a knuckle. Here's another knuckle. We'll give him some decent sized talons. I mean, look at my reference again. These are pretty long. Pretty long. There's definitely more finger than what I am. Definitely some more finger. So let's erase. Nothing wrong with an eraser, folks. Probably have his eye a little too big too, but I can. Here's another knuckle. This is pretty long. And moving into a fingertip, which is pretty bulbous and has like a claw. Yeah, these are pretty long. This is really long. Like this is probably not getting much information on his thumb. We can use that movie still up there for a little bit of reference. And maybe we can just keep it simple. Make it a little fatter, like a little ball at the tip, and then introduce our claw, our nail. Here, why don't we build out the wrist a little more, the back of the wrist a little more. There we go. And then here's that weird pinky. So it does have a little bit of a digit to it. It's not just a nail. Get a bit of a darker blue and try and work that a little better. Here's our hand moving into our little pinky. Okay, and the bulbous fingers. There's a nail. Okay, I feel a little better about that. Why don't we work this back leg? Maybe they taper a little more at the ankles, huh? And then they get fat again and turn into like a foot. Way bigger nails than what I think I initially gave him. This one can project a little more. Here, let's hide this. Hide the reference. Close on this one. Make them a little fatter. Go really far out and squint so we can see. It's looking much better. I think the fact that I fixed that hand really helps balance him out. The fact that he has giant, like I was talking before about his hand, or excuse me, that if he looked like he stood up, he would topple over. And I think the size of his hands help sell this massive weight. It's a counterbalance, you know? And these bumps, these ridges get progressively more like smoother as they end in his nose. And I know I made his eye bigger, but I want that to read. That bony, toothy part to a chin of some sort, and then the other part of his bony mandible. Again, it's kind of weird. Where is it? I don't know. If you're looking at hippopotamus, those things are weird as all get out. Like their tusks. I mean, like it's. If you look at a skull, a hippopotamus skull, it's like, what the heck is that thing? It's wacky looking. So the next thing I do is get his slobber in here. Can't have a Rancor without slobber. I'll keep this sharp over here, this elbow. Try and put the idea of a peck back in there. Like this is where the skin gets kind of bunchy, you know what I mean? Let's talk about that knee again, this foreshortened kind of leg coming at us. Yeah, let's go back to that foreshortened knee. An ankle going into the foot. Yeah, so I think one of the things I can start doing is maybe pushing some of these shapes a little bit here, this curve, I should say. So some of it can be playful a little bit. You can raise this part up just slightly. And it just gives it a little more attitude, you know. Yeah, it's fun that these vertebrae kind of muddle out and turn into the ridges of his face. That's kind of cool. Those guys, those Star Wars guys, they knew what they were doing. They knew. Oh, they knew. Look at our reference really quickly. Yeah, it's almost like his face is, whoops. Like this is all just kind of like tucked in. So I can give the impression of like flesh pushing in. I think we got about 2 minutes here. And I'm feeling pretty good about this sketch right now. It's coming out already. I mean, what I'll do eventually is I'll sign off, as I usually do, and I'll continue to work on it. One thing I was thinking about doing was recording just my cleanup process and my coloring process and post that as a like a speed sketch or a speed paint, just so there's something of a package, you know what I mean? This is a down plane. Yeah, totally obliterated his back arm, but I think it needed to be done. In order to just to help sell the clean silhouette. I got 1 minute left. What can I do? I mean, short of starting to clean them up a little bit, step back, go straight out and squint at it, and I'm feeling okay about it. It looks all right. One thing I didn't do is I didn't do the old flip test and see how it survives. Let's do that quickly. Oh! That'll be about it. That's about our time. So that's the flip test, which means once you flip it, you immediately see all your mistakes. And nothing particularly is jumping out at me right now. Maybe I pushed some of this a little too far. The hunches could probably come back a little bit. Let me make another layer on top, a corrections layer. And I'll use red, and then we'll wrap up here. I'll let you guys off the hook. Maybe this should come back just slightly. Just slightly. It just helps put him a little more, like maybe there's a little more trunk or pelvis. And like that'll help give him a little weight. I think if I do that correction, it will give him a little more of a balance. He won't look like he's tipping over as much. I should link these layers. We'll flip him back again and see how that sits with me. The red. Yeah, I think that'll be even if I split the difference a little bit there, I think that'll be a happy medium if I split the difference between what I have and that red mark I put down. Definitely on the bottom, I think definitely the trunk should be extended a little bit. And I can use some time to refine these hands a little more. They can use some more refining. But I think the basic idea that's going on is working. And that is really all that's important, really, at this stage, is to make sure our ideas are working. Well, that'll about do it for this week. One thing I probably could do is I can quickly, one of the things I like to do is just go over the prior week's live sketch, which was Power Droid. Let's save. Here's Power Droid from last week. Where's our reference? One of the things I was talking a lot about was varying the bumps that were on his that made his legs. And you know what? May have went a little too far with it. So I'd like to just take all of this stuff and shove it into a group and then pull it down a little bit. Okay, and work on top of it as a correction. Like this, there's still, it's too bumpy. It's too, I can't put a finger on it. Like this, like there's like this parallel going on. These are parallels right here against this super fat. But essentially, like, this is the same thickness, this is the same thickness, this is the same thickness, this is the same thickness almost when you get down to it. There could have been a lot more variety and play going on down here in the legs to make it a little more interesting. And also, when I remember I drew his smokestack fatter, and I cheated, and I used the transform tool, and I'll show you exactly what happens when I do that. It threw off the. Yes, you did it again. What I should have done, this perspective on this arc could have been a little more flatter and not like that. That just looks weird. And that was me just being lazy. And also, this thing could be a little more rounded. Could be it's not a really great circle. It's not a great circle. It could probably come forward a little better, a little more like this. That could have stand a little love. Or stood a little love. Yeah. Well, there he is. There's Power Droid. I'll put a link up to him so you can see him. One thing I'd like to also just suggest too before I sign off, there's a YouTube channel called Croaky Cafe. Wait a minute. It's called On Air Video, and they have something called the Croaky Cafe. It's a great resource for anybody who's doing life drawing or drawing from a live model. Be warned, it's got naked people in it, so if you get a little, if you can't handle it, but it's a great resource for you to practice your quick drawing. I try to use it at least once a week. I would like to say that it is no replacement of a live model. If you have a live model near you, it is certainly worth going to see a live model. You can see musculature and the lighting that you just can't see on a video or even from a photo for that matter. When you're there at a live model, you're seeing things that you can't normally see from a photo or even from YouTube. But that said, it's a resource that's technically free, and I want to start throwing some bucks at them. I have no problem supporting what they're doing because they're doing great work. All very quality stuff, really good models. They have a timer for you and everything. So go check them out. But that'll do it for this week. I thank you once again for joining me. You can follow me here on YouTube. If you type in Frank Summers Animation, you can find me there. To subscribe to me and see whatever the heck I'm doing. I try to do a drawing every day. You can follow me on Google+, same thing, Frank Summers Animation. Well, I'm on Tumblr. You search for Frank Summers, and on Twitter at Ganklin, at GANKLIN. And I post often my my daily updates there. Thank you very much for coming out, anybody who's watching this. I appreciate it, and you guys have a great week and keep drawing. Take care.